Next up is the accreditation update with Ms. Leanne Rice.
Good afternoon. Well, I am pleased to present to you the full results from our accreditation engagement review. This occurred on January 23rd to 26th. Accreditation occurs every 5 years, and so this is an extensive review of our school system and a summary of those results. Just as a summary, each of your board governance goals, I believe, is covered through this presentation. And I wanted to start just with a summary of what accreditation is. I think sometimes we have some misconceptions about this and why we look for accreditation. This is a process where schools and school districts are certified as having met minimum quality standards. They're really looking at continuous improvement and making sure that we have a culture where conditions, practices, and processes are focused on effective teaching and learning. That's why we're all here. We want our students to learn and grow every day. So we want to make sure that everything we do in our school system is organized around those goals. This review happens every 5 years. A third party is going to look at our documentation. They're going to interview stakeholders, and they'll provide us with feedback on what we're doing really well and maybe some recommendations for where we can do a little better. One of the reasons we need to focus on accreditation, if a student attends an unaccredited school, they're going to have difficulty transferring their credits, applying to college, or receiving financial aid. Here in Georgia, to receive the HOPE scholarship, you must be a graduate from an accredited school. So this is important for our families as they're looking at their next steps. When we have students who transfer to Forsyth County, if they don't come from an accredited school, we don't accept their credit. So they have to either get that credit through passing an EOC course or another test for that course or taking a subsequent course, and then we give previous credit for that. So the accreditation process is very important to certify that our students are getting a high-quality education. As I said, our review took place January 23rd to 26th. It was a virtual review due to COVID. There were 9 team members who came in and collectively had 237 years of experience in education. So a very well experienced team understanding different aspects of education. They interviewed 353 stakeholders. They looked at everything from you all as the governance team, also spoke with district leaders, school leaders, certified staff, including teachers, media specialists, instructional technology specialists, counselors, classified staff, including representatives from our technology department, food and nutrition, custodial staff, parents, students, and community members. There are 3 major domains, so they focus on leadership, learning, and resources, and there's 31 total standards from which we're evaluated. On the next few slides, I'm going to show you our actual results and the ratings that we received, but before I wanted to let you see the color coding system and the levels of standard attainment that we're striving for. So each of those 31 standards is going to be rated and color-coded. Blue is saying that we have exceeded standards. We are an exemplary district. Our work is impacting the work of our students and our school system, and these are noteworthy practices that we have. A green or an improving rating is meeting standards. That's saying that is where we should be. That's we've met the standard. We've demonstrated proficiency at that level. If you see a yellow standard, that means we are working on that standard. We are demonstrating some proficiency, but we want to keep improving in that area. And a red standard means we haven't met the standard at all, or there's no evidence to show that. So you can see we're striving for all green and blue. That's what we would like to see. Now, within each of those 31 standards, they're looking at 5 different elements of that standard. So they're looking at engagement. Are we including many different stakeholders in our decision making? They're looking at the implementation and how well we're implementing those different processes. They're looking at results. Are we using data to make our decisions? How are we taking those results and helping us grow and improve? They look at sustainability. So are these practices in place in a long-term manner? And what they use is at least 3 years. They want to see that implemented for 3 years or more. Within the aspect of this, because we had COVID, there was a little flexibility. There were some things we started maybe 5 years ago. We might have had to pause, but they did take that into consideration and didn't count it against us. And then embeddedness is looking at, is this a part of our culture? That if the leadership here left, would those practices still continue? That's just a deep ingrained piece of the culture that we have in Forsyth County. So on the next few slides, you're going to see each of those standards within the domains. I'm going to focus on one domain at a time and the standards within that domain. And you'll see ratings from a 1 to a 4 on engagement, implementation, results, sustainability, and embeddedness. And then you'll see the overall color coding where we are. So like I said, we want to see green and blue. So the first domain I'm going to show you is leadership. And you see all blue. This is phenomenal. This is saying of those 11 standards connected to leadership, we are exceeding the standards of expectation for the work in our system involving leadership. When you look down, these are things looking at do the actions of the system focus on our students and their outcomes for learning? Do we follow a continuous improvement process? Does the governing authority follow the policies that are established? Lots of different things on here. You're going to see all 3s and 4s on those individual elements of each standard. On the next slide, I'd like to point out some specific things that the review team specifically noted about us. They gave us a commendation for leadership and specifically said that the dedicated and highly qualified governing board, superintendent, and system leaders provide focused leadership with a clear direction and commitment to the school system's continuous improvement. This all stems from our leadership, including you all, including our district leaders and our principals that are setting a great standard for the decisions that we're making. There were several pieces. I just took their exact words and put a few things on here that they used as evidence for why they ranked us so highly in each of these areas. So again, looking at our governance team that is committed to following policies and adhering to those policies for our effective practices. The fact that you all were recognized at the 2019 Governance Team of the Year here in Georgia, which is quite an accomplishment. The interviews that they conducted talked about leaders always finding ways to serve our children in the best way possible. They specifically noted some of the programs that we have to develop leaders in our program, which I know we can thank Mr. Joey Perkle, who's recently retired, and now our Deputy Superintendent, Mitch Young, who's continuing this work, but programs like our Aspiring Leaders, Aspiring Principals, and especially our Class A program. We don't just focus on developing leaders in our certified staff, but also our classified staff as well, and that was highly recognized. They said we have a laser focus on continuous improvement, and again, commending us for the strong leadership and our ongoing commitment to our planning and protecting the operations of our school system. The next area is learning.
Famous statement he always says, what's your statement? Do you say it so
Getting better or getting worse?
There's no status quo, absolutely. Again, within our learning capacity, almost all of our standards, 11 out of the 12 were exceeding standard. One is meeting standard, and that comes back to assessment and grading and how we're using data and the consistency across our district. You just heard Heather talk about, as part of the high school improvement committee, we're talking about grading practices. We're talking about assessment and making sure that consistency is there. That is a defined area of need for us, and that's something that our department, as well as the other departments at the district level, are working with our school leaders on. Specifically in the learning domain, they gave us a commendation that said a supportive learning culture based on strong positive relationships exists in this school system. And I think those are things we're all very proud of. You'll notice it doesn't say that we achieve the highest data, the highest achievement level. We have the highest scores. That's not what we're about. We're about relationships, and we're about building a culture for learning and growing. And I think that was recognized here. When they conducted their interviews, they talked about some of the words that were used to describe our school system, especially being a large system with a small system feel, that we're a family, that we're supportive and dedicated, encouraging, that we follow teamwork and we're accepting. They also talked about how deeply ingrained the learner profile is in our level of work, that every team, every interview team they met with specifically referenced the learner profile from community members, parents, and staff. They talked about our CTAE programs and how our district doesn't just focus on preparing students for college, but look at career readiness, job readiness, whatever goals that students have when they leave our high schools, and that we do a really good job providing AP courses, CTAE courses and pathways. We provide dual enrollment options, internships, and work-based learning opportunities for our children. They talked about how aligned our community and our schools are. That's a big part of Forsyth County's success. We couldn't do the great work that we do without our community support, the parents, the business partners that we align with to provide these opportunities for our students. They talked again about all the programs and practices that help us build these strong positive relationships and encouraging us to continue to use data to make our decisions and building those positive relationships. Again, commended us for our concentrated efforts at assessing and communicating that progress, but encouraged us to continue this work so that we're protecting those practices and having consistency across all of our classrooms and schools. And then finally, our resources domain. Again, you're seeing almost all blue, almost all exceeding standard in the work that we're doing. The one area that they rated us at meeting standards was attracting and retaining qualified personnel who's supporting our system's purpose and direction. The data that they used for this was looking at our changing student demographics, that we've moved to a minority-majority student population, and encouraging us to look at our staff population as well, so that that's a little more reflective of our students. And again, a commendation that we received says that our school system demonstrates strategic resource management that includes long-range planning and wise use of resources to support our mission and vision. They specifically noticed that we have the highest financial efficiency rating, that we also have the highest possible bond rating. We're one of very few school districts in our state and across the country that have achieved financial ratings such as this. They looked at our fund balance, they looked at our budget, they looked at the fact that we've had the same millage rate for the last 7 years and are continuing to operate a highly successful school system on this millage rate and this budget. They looked at our digital resources, how we have integrated these into teaching, learning, and operations for not only our organizational effectiveness, but our professional practice and our student achievement levels. They've commended us on our commitment to access and the way that we use these resources and materials in all areas, and continue to encourage us to use data to make these decisions. The team applauds us for our formalized processes to identify personnel needs and to attract, recruit, and retain highly qualified staff, but also encouraged us to focus on recruitment to look at a more diverse applicant pool. And as a former principal, I can say, other than making sure that all of the people I served, the students and staff in my building, were safe, the next most important thing I did was hire the highest quality staff member to serve those students. And so just enhancing our applicant pool gives us that opportunity to find that very best person, whoever can support our children. And finally, after they rated us, they give us an overall score. That score is a holistic measure of our overall performance. It's a score that ranks between 100 and 400, and it takes the ratings from all three of those domains that you've just seen. Their goal is for a school system to have what they call an IEQ, or an Index of Education Quality, at least a 275. They feel like that score at 275 is saying that you're beginning to reach that impact level, or that blue level, that you've been meeting most of your standards and you're striving toward exceeding some of those standards. Our score was a 381.13. The average score of all of the schools in this accreditation over a 5-year period ranged between 278 and 283. So I want to stress to you that Forsyth County score was 100 points higher than what an average score is. And our lead reviewer said she thinks this might be the highest score. She hasn't seen a score this high. She was very complimentary of our district. She even joked about moving here or recruiting some of our staff, which we won't let happen, but was just so complimentary of the embeddedness, the ingrainedness of everything that we do here, that we focus on students, we focus on their needs, and we back that up with the decisions that we make, from our resources to our people, to the decisions that you all make from the board level all the way down, everyone in this system. It's quite an accomplishment. and something that I am very proud to be a part of.
Well, you should be, because the way that you led this and organized the whole process with you and your team, it was amazing just to be part of. And
Thank
so
you.
you should be very proud.
It was a lot of work,
It was.
totally worth it. And I think what I'm most proud of, Mr. McCall, is the fact that we were very transparent. We rated ourselves pretty hard, and in some standards, lower than what they rated us. We're high. We have high expectations here in Forsyth, and our children deserve our very best. And they, our families expect that from us. And so it was an honor to organize this work, but it was our real work. And I think that's what makes me the most proud, is they saw us for who we are and for what we do. And then just moving forward, looking at this data, as Dr. Bearden says, we're either getting better or we're getting worse. These are phenomenal ratings, but we're not done. And we see areas that we can do better, and we will. And so our next steps, we want to continue our work with those consistent principles around assessment. How do we help students see what they need to learn and where they are in the learning process? And that's a big part of, as Heather mentioned, setting those learning targets, identifying that success criteria so students know if they're meeting the target, and then giving them feedback along the way on what they're doing well and what they need to get better on. So by the time they do take a summative assessment, or we assign that grade at the end of the year, they've had every opportunity to master that standard. That's the goal we're working for, and we'll continue to work on that, leading the way through the teaching and learning department. We also want to make sure that we continue to use data. This is something Dr. Bearden preaches to us at all times. We make decisions based on data. And so specifically, we'll be looking at that with our professional learning, our technology, our instructional resources, and making sure not only are we using data to choose those resources, but we're also measuring the effectiveness and making sure that we're being good stewards of those financial and human resources with which we're trusted. And then all of this also connects so deeply with our strategic planning. We'll take the results from the accreditation review and use that as part of our strategic planning process so that we make sure those goals and objectives and action steps we create for our strategic plan continues to help us grow and improve as a district. What questions can I answer for you?
Do you have any idea how many systems use this accreditation?
Quite a few. It is one, I do know that it is an international accreditation, and so there are districts and individual schools all across the world that follow this. I could dig a little deeper and give you specific.
That is not just.
Oh, it's not like 100 schools. It's, yes. And those are all schools and districts that have been evaluated over the last 5 years. So for,
Cherokee's about to go through theirs coming up right
yes,
away.
later this month, they will go through
Several of
theirs.
them.
In the state of Georgia, there's 2 accrediting agencies. So you have Cognia, and then I believe it's the Georgia Accreditation Commission. Most of the larger school systems utilize Cognia.
The Georgia Accreditation Commission is not international.
No, it's strictly just for Georgia. Yes. Yes, so we're being compared amongst school systems all across the world.
Well, and that makes sense with, our population of students, I would
correct.
say as well. That we need to maintain international, and if we have 2 options and one doesn't have international presence, then the other one is
Well, we very much have a global student body that we fully expect, once they graduate from our schools and move on to wherever we'll work through around the world. And so you're right, it is important that we use standards that are internationally based, not just based in our state.
Well, and we score number 1 in state on almost everything. So we're looking to compete even higher. So we need to go beyond Georgia to make sure that we're competing even higher, to raise our standards.
Absolutely.
I think it's interesting that they put a lot of thought into the strategic planning too, that they're referencing, hey, let's let you guys go through your strategic planning and be part of that, and to focus on that. I think that was really good for them. Are we going to be able to post this on the website so this is very transparent to the community of these are the standards we met, these are the 3 next steps we have?
So would you like this PowerPoint?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is why I took the screenshots, so that we had everything public and transparent.
Perfect. Thank
I'm
you.
very proud of the work.
Yeah, it should be. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
along with the accolades, I always tell people that I feel like I'm riding everyone's coattails, right? Because everyone who's in leadership or even working, at various levels have been here so long and really have built this just great system. So I love being a part of it. I love what you all have done. And I guess I also too want to just stress, because I know there's been some interpretation that, this accreditation is this major, whatever comes out of it is what we're going to follow, and this is kind of our path. But like you put here, it's just part, and it's just one part of many that
Right.
we use for a success trajectory. So it's not, this is not the roadmap that we use, but it's one part of the tool that we're going to use
Absolutely.
to
And
fulfill the
the commendations and the recommendations that come from that, that's all they are. They're recommendations. They're not requirements. They're not mandates that we have to follow. We have met accreditation. We are an accredited school system. And so this is feedback for us from an outside group, that what they're seeing, and then we can take and do what we want with those recommendations.
To Darla's question, my good friend Dr. Bennett texted me some information about Cognia.
Thank you.
Cognia accredits 30,
That's right.
36,000 primary and secondary public and private schools in 85 countries, with nearly 30,000 of those in the United States. So think about that for a second. There are 159 school systems in Georgia. They accredit 30,000 school systems in the United States. So you're comparing ourselves to 30,000 school systems in our country, and there's 85 countries that are accredited through Cognia.
We have a lot to celebrate.
And also, the review team is not necessarily employed by Cognia. They're
Right.
No.
people like us.
Yes.
They're leaders from around the country that have come together to perform this audit, if you would.
Absolutely. They are, our lead evaluator was a retired superintendent, but there were also people on the team, a director of professional learning from a district here in Georgia, many from districts across the country in various roles. And they try to have a mixture of roles so that you're getting different lenses into the work that we do. Several of our team members have served on accreditation teams in other districts across our country, so that we can see that process as
Yeah,
well.
so
It's
the
a great
community kind of
point.
knows who that team is, and
Yes.
that's 20 to 30 years experience per team member, and I did recruit them while we were on our call. I let them know we did have openings on our website if they wanted to check
Excellent.
that out.
So again, just to reiterate, and Leanne did a great job of covering this, so 29 out of 31 are blue. But the two that are green, we're already working on. We have been working on. The grading piece we've been working on for some time now. That is a very challenging conversation. There's lots of opinion around grading and reporting, as you guys well know. And the other one, for several years now, Cindy and her team have been very active in going out and recruiting minority candidates to consider applying for jobs in Forsyth County. Once again, to Leanne's point, we're not an affirmative action organization. We're always going to hire the best candidate, but it's only reasonable to assume that if you increase your minority candidate pool, you're going to hire more minority candidates. And we're seeing that. We're starting to see some results of that. Dr. Jamie Brown, who works in Cindy's office, is our primary recruiter, goes to a lot of job fairs, representing Forsyth County schools, and we're starting to see some results. So I really do believe 5 years from now, when we go through another accreditation, we're going to be able to show that we've demonstrated growth in those two areas.
Just one other thing, Leanne. I know sitting through the learning section, that when you guys were doing all the assessment and you were grading, you were coming up with your numbers, that was hours and hours of meetings. And like you said, staff were hard on themselves. But don't you think going through that process, there was, we went from 380, all the people in the room talking, collaborating, and don't you think that in of itself was going to help us improve, because the sharing and the conversations they were having, lifting each other up and talking about their processes, like, to me, that was already improvement along the way.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example of where the process is more important than the product. And that conversation and that collaboration, it really was very critical to our growth as a system.
And my final comment, we shared the results of this with our leadership team. The mood was very celebratory. I mean, we've gone through 2 really challenging years with COVID and everything. And on top of that, to go through an accreditation and starting the strategic planning process, there's just been a lot on the plate. but to have an outside organization come in and give us really what I would call a stellar review was very affirming for the work we've been doing over the years. And again, and Leanne pointed out this, but I want to say it again, it really does take, for us who are the staff in Forsyth County Schools, to have a Board of Education that is appropriately involved, but it gives us the resources and support and autonomy we need to be able to do the work on a day-to-day basis while being very clear about your expectations is so critically important. And it's, again, so affirming when an outside agency comes in and clearly sees that there's direction from the board, yet under that direction, there's lots of resources and support to make it happen. And that's a winning formula, and I just applaud you guys. You should be as proud of this as the staff is proud of this, and I hope our community is equally as proud, because they should be. You know, anybody who lives in our community, any parent who has children attend our school system should be very proud of the quality product that they're given in our school system. So thank you for your work in this. And Leanne, great job.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Great job.
You're not going anywhere.
No, I'm not.